now let's talk a little bit about embedded sentences, but in particular embedded sentences showcasing this really cool property of language called recursion. Okay, so here's an example verb phrase VP rule. A verb phrase can be expanded to include a verb followed by a sentence, right? So we have Hoggle thought, there's our verb, and this sentence, Sarah ate the peach. So verb followed by sentence, so thought Sarah ate the peach is the verb phrase. And what's interesting about this is that, again, this whole thing is a sentence, and then you have a sentence inside of a sentence, right? So if we think of sentences as a type of phrase, we have sentences or phrases, noun phrases, verb phrases, for example. Recursion is having a phrase of one kind inside a phrase of the same kind. So a sentence inside of a sentence, a noun phrase inside of a noun phrase, a verb phrase inside of a verb phrase, right? And the reason that this is cool is it allows you to sort of have this iterative process of generating successively longer and longer and longer phrases. And I'll show you an example in a minute. But just as a reference, this link space episode, particularly this part of this episode, talks a little bit more about recursion. You may find that helpful. This is an example sentence, right, that uses recursion that's in this particular episode. So Fred's belief, it's a noun phrase, belief what? That the people who live on the station, that's a noun phrase, that Alex calls home, refuse to surrender, influenced whether the inhabitants running out of water is as crazy as it sounds, right? And this is like a huge mouthful. But at the end of the day, it's really just Fred's belief about this whole thing, and this whole thing is generated by using recursion. So let's go back to our simple example of a verb phrase expanding to have a verb followed by a sentence. And let me just demonstrate for you this idea of creating successively longer and longer pieces, right? So we have, using our verb and sentence, Ludo said Hoggle thought Sarah ate the peach. So here now is our sentence, Hoggle thought Sarah ate the peach. And we can use that same rule to say, well, I'll just stick a verb in front of that sentence and I'll make an even longer sentence. Ludo said Hoggle thought Sarah ate the peach. And guess what? This whole thing is the sentence. So you can put it inside of another verb phrase, right? So the fairy claimed Ludo said Hoggle thought Sarah ate the peach. And guess what? This whole thing is a sentence. So guess what? You can put it inside. Actually, that part should only extend to there because the sentence starts here, the fairy claimed, and hoped is our verb. But guess what? You can make an even longer sentence that includes that sentence, which includes this sentence, which includes this sentence, which includes this sentence, right? That's recursion, using this particular rule that allows you to expand a verb phrase to include a sentence. And because sentences include verb phrases, that's how you get this loop, this iterative process of creating successfully longer and longer and longer sentences. Now you can do the same thing with other phrases. For example, noun phrases in English. One way to think about a noun phrase is you can have a possessive rule. So a noun phrase is made up of a noun phrase apostrophe S, in this case not showing up in this tree, but a noun phrase followed by another noun. So a noun phrase goes to noun phrases noun. So we can start with Sarah's friend, right? Sarah's friend, but that whole thing is a noun phrase. So guess what? Now we can say, well, that whole thing, Sarah's friend's uncle, right? And now that whole thing is a noun phrase. So Sarah's friend's uncle's neighbor. All these are dwarves, right? So that's that same property of creating successively, longer and longer and longer pieces. And that's what recursion allows you to do. It's this very powerful property in human language.